Okay, this is going to be the simplest, but one of the most useful trainings that I've ever produced around the idea of hosting a podcast. And we're going to cover a few things to become a better host or become a better facilitator. So I think the first thing you have to think about when wearing your hat as a podcast host is remembering that you're essentially a facilitator. You're the person that's there to help the ideas be more consumable for the person listening or more teaching for the person listening. And so you have to, I guess, kind of understand that first. Things that can make hosting difficult to listen to. Often as a host, you do want to make a point, and that's important. But there will be times where, and I've been on shows like this before, where a host takes so long to ask a question, like, a very long thought out question. And it's so because they want a short answer for you because they have the next comment in mind. It makes it very difficult because it doesn't become a flow from you to a flow back from the guest and a conversation. So think about when you're asking questions, the main reason to ask a question is to facilitate something thoughtful, helpful, and teaching for your audience. And that's a really, really important way to think about every single question you ask. And the way my preparation has changed now versus how it started is it's become very different. When I first started interview preparation, this is almost 9 years ago now, I hadn't done a lot of interviews, so I hadn't really gotten a lot of training under my feet. But one of the things I found is I would over prepare for an interview because I was concerned about where it was going to go or if we we're going to have enough information or whatever it may be. What I have found now is I do pre-script some of the interview, but this is how it works. I'll write 1 to maybe 5 questions maximum. That is a well thought out question. Now, the purpose of that question is to open up a conversation. And then based on what the guest says, really good follow-up questions are important. Now, what'll happen is, this is a really simple old school tactic, but I keep this guy next to me, and I always make sure to have this guy next to me too. And when I ask that really good, thoughtful question, the guest is going to say some really useful and interesting things. So what I will do is write those things down very quickly so that I can keep my attention on the guest and focus on the guest. Because if you grab that thought that you want to ask a follow-up question and don't write it down, you stop listening to the guest. I've done it so many times. So you write it down so you can keep listening, keep your attention on the guest. And the thing that can be difficult is too, and this is feedback I've gotten from people listening to me, is you have to have this balance between letting the guest talk and not letting the guest deliver a monologue. So what I try to find in that balance is I have my follow-up questions I've written down, or not even just probably 1 to 3 word ideas. So I don't forget what they mean, because if you read at the whole question, you're going to once again stop listening. Once it feels like they've made their point and I'm getting too far away from where the follow-up would fit, I'll ask the follow-up. Now, if I wanted to expand on what they were still talking on, I'll write that down to remember to go back to it. But they'll get done. They'll say, hey, well, just based on what you were talking about here, you talked about X, Y, Z. Let's dive into that a little bit more and kind of expand on that a little bit more. So when you're hosting, you want to go back to the points that were really valuable and kind of develop a little bit or deserve a little bit more dissecting. And that's something you can take and bring out for the audience. And frankly, I find you want to listen to people that are good interviewers and kind of look at what they do. Like, rest in peace, Larry King. Or if you look at somebody that's done a lot of television interviews, like somebody on 60 Minutes or something, like not the new 60 Minutes. They're a little bit too, new school journalism. I'm talking about old school journalists. And you look at how they ask questions and how they conduct conversations. I find that to be very, very useful information. I've actually learned a lot, not from other podcasters, but from other people that do long form interviews. So going back to what I said, you have to remember to have your interviewer hat on is important. Don't over prepare, but be familiar with your guest and have your 3 to 5 questions written out. Have your pad next to you because a follow-up question is going to be vital to a good conversation and something that helps the audience. Remember, what you're doing is you're teaching the audience. You have to remember the reason people are here is they're here to learn something. They're here to get information. They're here to walk away with something. This isn't an infomercial. This isn't all about you. This isn't all about the guest. This is here to facilitate for them. So I find, and this is something that does take a little practice, the best way to learn how to answer a follow-up question is from the viewpoint of someone that is listening to you. If you were somebody brand new to this or that wanted more information about this, what would you ask? That's a really good way to work your follow-up questions. Okay, so that's your initial kind of thought process around questioning and what you should be looking at. Now, when you open up an interview, I see YouTube really is kind of the main, and Rumble and places like that is the main place that things are going. So when you open up, you do want to, welcome people to the show. Hey, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for spending some time with us today. If you are new to this channel, do me a big favor and hit the subscribe button below, and be sure to share with your family and friends, like and comment. We want to engage with you. We want to have this as a conversation. That's how you open. Then you want to talk about a really important reason that you're having this conversation. In the past 6 months, the Fed has raised interest rates 3 times. We have never been in a situation like this before. And you, as the consumer, are left in a position where you don't know what to do. Today, our guest is going to give us the exact information that you need to know to get around what the Fed is doing to grow and to support your family. So it's just something quick. It's 10, 15 seconds. It grabs their attention. Boom. Now intro the guest. Our guest today is an expert in blah, blah, blah. He's worked with blah, blah, blah. He has these accolades, blah, blah, blah. And we welcome him to the show. Hey, thanks for hanging out today. Hey, absolutely. So the one thing you don't want to do, and I've found this from experience, is you don't want to hand over too much control to the guest in the beginning. And something a lot of people do is say, hey, tell us your story or tell us about it. I've done that. Don't do that. Don't do the tell us your story thing, because it could go 10 minutes. It could go 1 minute. It could go 35 minutes. So what I like to do is I like to have there's 2 different ways I'll do this. One, I'll have the exact, intro of their experience I want to give. And then I'll ask my first question. Or I may say, hey, real quick, just for people that may not know you or may not have your experience, just tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do. They'll take a minute or so and talk about that because you're kind of giving them preference. And then you can go into your questions. Now, when you get to the end of an interview, you want to remember that one of the number 1 reasons that somebody is on an interview is to promote themselves and to get other people to look at them and what they're doing. So you often want to close it with thanking them. Hey, thank you so much for spending some time with us today. And I really appreciate, the information you provide our audience. If they want to connect with you, if they want to support what you're doing, where's going to be the best place for our listeners to check that out? And that's a great way to close it out. Hey, everyone. Thank you so much for listening today. This is after you've let them close it out. Thank you so much for listening today. Just a reminder, if you're new to this channel, or if you're new to the show, hit the subscribe button so you don't miss any new episodes. Comment, like, and share this episode so we can engage with you. And we look forward to seeing you in a future episode. So as a host, it's something that you want to continue to work on. You continue to grow your chops at, but remember a few things. The viewpoint is you want to be asking questions from the viewpoint of the person that would be listening to this so they can get the most out of it. You want to remember you're the facilitator, and asking good questions is important. You can give your opinions. That's important. But remember, you don't want a monologue where there's not enough balance between you and the guest. This should be 70% guest, 30% you. You also are a facilitator for the guest. So you want to you give the guest a great question, have a really good follow-up ready that you have a pad ready for, because you want to write that down so you keep listening to them. You always want to give them your attention and give the audience your attention as well. So I hope you found this helpful. We'll be adding some more interview tactics in the future, but I want to give you just kind of some basic things that you should understand going out that I've learned in almost 1,200 interviews. A big part of it is experience. One thing I did forget here that I want to mention. If you're not very familiar with someone else's work, but they've done some media, go find another show they were on and listen to 5-10 minutes of it. Maybe you don't listen to a ton. You're listening for a couple different things. How they answer questions. Do they need a long question or a short question? What's their pacing like? Things like that. Because if you understand their communication type going into the interview, you're going to be able to control and run the interview better. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and we look forward to helping you create a better podcast.